The touch of curves is very lovely. Hi, I'm Carol Podell, and this is She Takes the Lead. Hi, party people. It's Carol. I hope you guys are having a great day or night or wherever you're listening, but
Bridgerton Season 3, Part 1 is out.
It is going to be a Bridgerton episode, so bear with me. There will be spoiler alerts for Season 3, 2, and 1 likely, so if you haven't seen it yet, go see it, then listen. But it came out, and I'm a huge Bridgerton fan. Huge. Season 1 came out during COVID, and I was like in the depths of mommying and daughtering during that time. Like we were really in our little pod, my parents and my daughter, and I didn't really have much contact with the outside world. So, the Duke and Duchess were a very welcome accompaniment. Anyway, so it came out, I don't know, a little while ago, and I'm totally obsessed. I've seen it a couple times already. We're only through the first half of the season because they're re-airing the rest in another month. So maybe I'll do a follow-up, maybe I won't. And it's funny because I am Penelope Featherington. Now, I don't know if that sounds weird or not, or maybe some people really do relate to that, but I relate to her in every way possible. And it's just such a funny experience. So I was kind of coming of age, I guess, or I was adulting and learning how to adult during the Sex and the City era and whatever. And you always like, are you a Samantha, a Carrie, a Charlotte, or a Miranda? And to be honest, I've always related to all of them and also none of them. And I was very much married or in a relationship. So like I didn't have the same New York experience. I later had the same New York experience or a similar New York experience in terms of like dating and all of that and the craziness of it and like the people you meet and all of that stuff. So it was definitely, I have had my share, but I didn't really relate that much. And I'm from New York. It's not like, the New York story of it was there. But I know like there were a lot of women that really related to it. So now I'm watching Bridgerton and I fully relate to this woman. And, like it's kind of crazy. I mean, I'm not her, blah, blah, blah. But at the same time, like I was heavier as a kid, felt very much like an outsider, also kind of a closeted, hopeless romantic, which I think I am to this day. Definitely had my own interests but also did have some really key friends who really were my touchstone, but very much felt like an outsider. Like I was outside looking in all the time. I went to private school. I'm very privileged, and did not fit into quote unquote society of that universe. And I'm sure one could argue if I talked to probably most of the people in my class, they probably felt the same because that's also sort of the nature of that age. But, we're talking about my experience, so I will just share that. But I guess ultimately I felt like I was on the outside, always looking in. My parents, thank God, and my family were not the Featheringtons. So we'll stop it there. And at least for me, though, I mean, most of this shifted once I got to high school, which was just a miracle and a blessing. But so now I've done like a deep dive into the fandom of it, right? And why they get together. And so this is one of the spoiler alerts. They kiss, right? And suddenly Colin, who's the romantic male lead, realizes at that moment that kiss meant everything. And suddenly he realizes that Penelope is not just his little friend or his little sister's friend, but like a woman that he is feeling attracted to, not just like loving her for her friendship. So I went down this like fandom hole, and it was really funny because some of the things that I saw were really interesting. And I guess this is what I kind of wanted to like, what motivated me to like make this episode about this. Because first of all, there were people who were like, you can't just fall in love after a kiss. And I totally disagree. I'm not saying you can fall in love after a kiss from someone you've just met. I think that's a little bit of a stretch, but I have personally had the experience of and my path has often been friends to lovers kind of development of relationships, but I absolutely have like had a kiss that like, I felt down to my calves and was like, oh my God, this is the most spectacular experience I've ever had. They were a friend that I did, you don't really know how that kiss is going to go. And then on the adverse side of that, I've also, thinking that I was going to have this amazing chemistry with a friend. And then it felt like I was kissing my brother. So it can happen, first of all. So I just wanted to like, I don't know, I found it so interesting. There was like so many debates around this, and so many people were like, that's too easy, that's too obvious. Um, and I thought it was really funny because yeah, it can be that big of a moment, and it can turn you around. The other piece that I find interesting that's been running around is, so those who don't know, if you're just listening, Bridgerton is a regency story of a family of beautiful Bridgertons. There's 7 kids, and each book, they're based on books, each book is about, they're romance novels. I mean, they're like basically like girl porn, really. Like they're so good. I don't know how to explain it. They're really like, they're sexy and they're hot and they're smart and interesting, and Shonda Rhimes is a genius, and the people she hires are geniuses because they really, the thing that's fun about this particular one is that the women actually have agency. They really have agency, and often the perspective is not the male gaze onto the woman, it's the female gaze. And you don't really see that perspective, especially in this era. And it's not that you don't see the male gaze and their perspective, but you see it through the lens of women who are trying to survive in a world that they have no say in, but also are having say in it. And it's just a really beautifully done series, in my opinion. It hits my happy place button for all the romance and the beauty and all of that, because I'm totally a sucker for that. But also, it's smart, like it's smartly done, and it's really well written. I think they just turn a story, one thing after the other thing after the other thing, in like 10 minutes. You've gotten an entire story. So Colin is one of the Bridgertons, and he's like one of the brothers, and he comes back and basically gets a Bridgerton glow up. He's been traveling for months abroad, and brings back all of the mysticism and sensuality of traveling by yourself abroad, where you can be somebody else while you're traveling. I have done that too, which is really wonderful. It's such an incredible experience to like go travel by yourself and be able to be who you want to be there, regardless of whether that's who people see you as. And so he comes back and he's beautiful, and they've just made him so dashing and handsome, and he looks like Errol Flynn coming out of the whatever. It's just they've sexified him very much. And then Penelope Featherington is like the awkward, chubby best friend that nobody sees other than as a best friend. She's in a family of that's ridiculous, that everybody thinks is laughable, and she wants to get out of her situation, and she has no autonomy, and she needs autonomy. And in that day and age, the only way you get autonomy is the most autonomy you can get is by getting married, so that you can have the financial stability of what a husband at the time brings. So she decides she's going to get married, and she does a Bridgerton glow up, which is amazing. I mean, Nicola Coughlan is a beautiful woman in any room, and they've made her in the other ones like with these really tight little red curls, and they've put her in these insane like neon orange citrusy colors, and it's they've done a very good job of making her look ridiculous, but it's not that hard to give her a glow up, and they do, and she just looks really stunning, like in a very classic sense. They've really like they just made her classically stunning. And she goes out to try and find a husband, and has kind of decided that she's no longer going to try and push for Colin because she knows it's not a reality, although she continues to be in love with him. And he tries to help her get a husband, and that's sort of the inciting incident that moves these two characters towards their story and towards each other. And first of all, like, and I read that, I think there's a scene coming later where she's naked, and I'm really curious to see how they did that, because I really love that they've embraced that all bodies are beautiful and they all look different. The thing is, though, and I find this, and this could be my own interpretation and my own narrow-minded view and very American and very white view of how people are interpreting this, but based on my fandom deep dive, the perspective on her specifically, since we're talking about this, and her being the curvy girl, is that you can see past that. Like that he sees past that. Now they put her in like a corset, and she's got like her breasts are all up in her chin, and she's gorgeous, and they've put her in the most stunning dresses with this beautiful hair and everything else. But the thing that I find funny or interesting, I have my own body issues. I am the first person to admit it. I'm curvy, but I am not comfortable at a certain size. The piece about it is that I have experienced being with men who like curvy girls. I've actually experienced where I've been told not to lose too much weight. And it's really kind of an incredible experience. Externally, that doesn't change your perspective on yourself. Like, that's an inside job, right? But, and this is where I'm going to Bridgerton and this whole body positivity, or really just we love the curvy girl, right? But it's not because we see through that to who they are. Men love all different kinds of women. It's a type, It's not, in my opinion, right? Now I'm doing a very deep dive into this, so just bear with me for a minute, though. It's like, as my imagination unfolds, and, Colin has been traveling for months all throughout Europe and going to all of these countries and cities, and experiencing all of these women, and they've clearly showed that he's become this incredible sexual being. He's having threesomes in brothels and clearly knows what he's doing, et cetera, et cetera. And as this relationship is unfolding, like, what's going on in my head is that his experience of going abroad was not just experiencing women, but experiencing the women he likes and the women he's attracted to. And in my mind, that is a curvy girl. Like, that is what happened. It's not that suddenly he sees her who she is because she put a corset on and she's got, a better makeup job. It's that in my mind, and I'm just talking physically, and I'm about to go into the emotional side of this, but just from a physical attraction standpoint, and that's important to me, is the truth. And some people, that does not matter the same way. And and honestly, like, I like a beefy man. I think that most people have a type, and that whether that's a physical type or an emotional type or a mental type or an intelligence type. But I think that everybody kind of has their preferences. Sometimes that's blown out of the water because you meet somebody who's just you're connected with, and this leads to my other thing that I'm talking about. But in my estimation, I think that he learned who he was, and the women that he was with perhaps were not necessarily these like beautiful Parisian thin women. They could be these beautiful Parisian curvy women. Anyway, it's a very white American, maybe European perspective on beauty, right? And you see artists over time, Otello, like, they're artists that show the beauty of the curvy woman, and they're artists that show the beauty of the thin woman, right? And this is a fashion of the time, and this is a fashion of the interpreter. The other thing, during this time, like, they were covered in crinolines, like, they were covered in layers and layers and layers of fabric and corsets and all of these things to create a certain shape. It's only really in the 60s where women's clothes stopped covering their entire body, where you could see the body underneath. So, like, the whole concept of, like, that women don't have cellulite, that the skin is perfect and it's not puckered, and there's no bellies, and there's everything is smooth, like, that's because up until that moment, women were wearing all kinds of shapewear underneath their clothes to create a silhouette. Now that there is no silhouette, the pressure is on the woman to look like they are in shapewear all the time. And that is almost impossible. Like, some women actually look like this. one of my best friends actually looks like this. Not all women look like this. And honestly, my women friends are quite beautiful. I mean, like we all look different. We all have different ways of presenting ourselves and everything else, but like you can see the beauty. And I mean, I love them. So obviously I'm biased, but point being, they all have something beautiful about them. And, because they don't look the way you envision a body to look in a bikini that is the same shape and height and texture of shapewear, of a whalebone corset or a push-up bra or pantyhose is the confusion, right? And culturally, that's also in Latin culture, in Black culture, those are the two that I know. Skinny women, no hips, no breasts, no nothing, is not considered the beautiful of the culture, right? And it's very clear that that's the case. There's a in Orange is the New Black, there's an amazing line. I don't remember what character said it, but at some point they're talking about like bodies, and one of the women who's Black, who's in the show, says white women have it easy because all they have to do is be skinny. And yeah, the truth is, for American white women, skinny is the thing. The skinnier you are, that's what right now is beautiful, but not necessarily for everybody. And certainly not in like cultures. It's very, very different. It's just such a funny thing to me because that interpretation, it's really through the lens of a broken perspective, or maybe it's just through the lens of an American perspective. And I'm not downing skinny women either, just for the record. But the touch of curves is very lovely, I mean, women's skin is softer than men's, right? So like round feels amazing, like my curves, when I'm rounder, it feels great. Like on my hands, if I'm going down my skin, it feels beautiful. I don't necessarily feel comfortable in it in certain ways, but it feels good. Another movie that I also love the line of, or this scene of, is in Pulp Fiction, where Bruce Willis comes back from, I don't know, doing some like, he's a boxer and he comes back from like throwing a fight and he's running for his life now or whatever. And he comes back and he's got this French girlfriend, and I don't remember her name, but she's so cute in this. And she's like, talks like this with the little French accent, which I usually turn into a German accent, so bear with me. But there's this wonderful thing. They're in bed, and she says, "I wish I had a pot." And he's like, "What are you talking about?" And she goes, "I wish I had a pot belly." And he goes, "That's okay, you do." And she goes, "No, no, 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 no. I have a little belly like Madonna in Lucky Star." And she goes, "But I think a woman with a pot belly is very sexy." She goes, and this isn't, again, another interpretation, but I find it interesting. Like, she goes, "The rest of you is normal. You have a normal face, a normal legs, a normal hips, and a perfectly round pot, which is soft, which feels good." And that's the piece that I think is so funny, is that it feels good. So like, it's what has your brain been trained to do versus what actually feels good are not always the same thing. And finding your way to that is also not always the same thing. So, and frankly, I didn't actually come on here to like kind of go through body positivity, but I guess I'd be remiss to not talk about it, because really that is a piece of it, is the idea that we all can be loved, right? That we all are loved. Body positivity is that all bodies are beautiful and all people love all different bodies. And that is not because somebody's looking past that. It is because they like that. And that is the experience of that is well more pleasurable than the whatever the pressure is, or whatever the culture is, around what you are supposed to like. So now the other piece that in this Bridgerton thing, which is also why I said I feel like I am Penelope Featherington, is that on the broader point, which is what I guess I keyed into, which is why I have gone off on this insane tangent of needing to talk about this, is that I relate to these characters because they see each other. Because it's not just that they see each other's souls, right? I mean, and that's so like, that's true, but and it's such a big sweeping romantic statement, but they see each other. They see each other's complexities and their perspective and their humor and their jokes and their appreciation for the same things. And personally, that is something that I don't experience that often. And when somebody sees me, it's like a next level of, and they don't run. When somebody sees my complexity, or that I feel safe enough where I can reveal that, and that they see it and they like it, or that love it, or find it charming or warming or wonderful or terrible, but like wonderful at the same time, is probably the most romantic, hot, sensual, and spiritual experience of a connection of another human being that I have. And that happens, that happens with friends that see you. You have friends who see you, they understand you, they appreciate you. And definitely once you're getting into an intimate relationship and somebody sees you, it's like even beyond that, because now you can really be yourself, and you can be yourself in every possible way, and you can be yourself intimately as well. And I think that that's the piece that with these two characters, they see each other and they know who each other are on a level. I mean, that's also like why the friends to lovers piece is so endearing, is because like by the time you've become friends, you know who these people are, and you've seen them kind of be imperfect, and you've seen them probably in situations where they're not showing off their perfection or their whatever they're carrying. They're being themselves. And as a woman at this point in my life, and single, and I think this is, you dare not to speak for other people, but at the same time, like I feel like I can say this with some confidence, that as you get older and you're single and you're dating, it gets harder. And that's at least my experience. And that is the experience of some of my friends, is that as you get older, it gets harder to find a partner who sees you, and sees you for all that you are, all that you want to be, and all that you're not, and sees all of the pieces of you. I'm a pretty independent woman. And I hate saying that as a negative, or as a, like that's not a good thing. I think that's a great thing. And independent women need people. Like they need somebody to take care of them as well. It's not because they have to have somebody to take care of them, but because they'd like it, because it's nice. Because it's nice to be able to let go for a minute. It's nice to not have that pressure that you don't have to handle everything. It's not that you can't. I can. It's that you don't have to. But it gets harder as you get older, because you learn how to handle more things, and you learn how to take care of yourself, and you learn how to be with yourself far more comfortably, at least in my experience. I do think that the piece of that with women who are, halfway through their lives, if they live long, or who have been divorced or never been divorced, is that they've had time to develop themselves and focus on themselves and to embody the person that they wanted to be, and develop the pieces of them that they want to be developed. And that can be, and I understand that can be intimidating. I think that, you know, uh, you always, or at least I see, maybe it's just my Instagram algorithm, but, you see a lot of quotes from women like Aretha Franklin, is like, they say, do men find you intimidating or something like, and she's like, men can find me intimidating, but a man won't. Meaning, like, yes, understandably, men could find me intimidating, but a man who's comfortable with himself won't. You see this kind of quote often roaming around. I do, at least in my algorithm. But the other part of that is that now, and with online dating, right, you have women who are looking for men who they deem to be on their level, and their level has increased. And frankly, given I think we're in like 60-40 women to men's, like statistically, so the men are outnumbered. So the women are looking for men. And then when men are divorced, they're now maybe looking for somebody younger. They're looking for something that's not as complicated, because divorce is complicated, and splitting up assets is complicated, and splitting up children is complicated. And then women are looking for autonomy, I think, often more than a spouse on their next act. But a man, I think, is more looking for something a little less complicated, and women are looking for something a little more complicated. So, like, there's this, I love him, Professor Galloway, Scott Galloway. And if you don't follow him, you should follow him. He's brilliant, and he's very upfront about the gender gaps societally as well as monetarily, and the equity around it, how it influences our society and how it will influence society. Like, statistically, he said, I think 2 in 3 relationships start on Tinder, or maybe that's a metaphor for a social media app. And if there are 50 women and 50 men, do you have 50 women who are looking for college educated men who are handsome, successful, probably trim or in some kind of shape, that are the hunter and gatherers for women? That 50 are showing their attention to roughly the top 4 men out of 50 on social media. What happens? That signals that the other 46 fast math men are not finding women that are finding them eligible, is terrifying, right? And thus then it's depressing, probably, and also not fair to the men who have to be this person who is always the hunter gatherer. He can't be exploring his own second act or his own career change, or have his own crisis that's not a midlife crisis, that's just desire to pivot one's life, which is the right of anybody. And honestly, I am as guilty as anybody of putting men in that box too, and requiring a man to be in that box. But the thing that I find kind of amazing about it is that you've now got women like me to kind of go back to Penelope Featherington and Colin Bridgerton. The idea that someone sees you, all of you, and embraces you. I am very much different than I was when I was younger, in many, many ways. Perhaps you could argue that I was that then, and it was just hiding under a lot of insecurity, and that's possible, and maybe that's what happened. But the truth is that I think, and I feel pretty confident that I've had a lot of time to do work on myself and to become the person that I wanted to be. And I have had a lot of experiences that have created the person that I am, some for better, some for worse. Being able to take all of that in, or being with someone, for someone to see all of that in me, to understand that I still do feel like the fat girl. I've been thin most of my existence, air quote thin, or been in a body that is societally acceptable, right? In all iterations, and still feel like the fat girl sometimes, and still feel like the dumb girl sometimes, but also feel like the sexiest woman in the room, but also feel like the most beautiful woman in the room, but also feel like the smartest woman in the room, or the most independent, or the toughest woman in the room, the most independent woman in the room. And I don't think I'm alone, I think, is the thing. I don't think I'm alone in this. I think that probably if I were to like take a anonymous poll, it would very much be that most people feel that way, that most people are, in fact, their lives are very much informed by their youth, which is very much out of your control in a lot of ways. Like, you are who you are at that point in your life. You are sort of a slave to your circumstance, because you don't have much say in getting out of that circumstance yet. And so you can, over time, as you get older, you can do your Bridgerton glow up, you know, change your look, change your clothes, change your hair, change your makeup, get a tan, but ultimately who you are inside remains the same. And that the only way that that changes over time and with work. I love Bridgerton. Hey, thanks so much for listening. If you like what you heard, please hit subscribe. Also, if you want to keep in touch, go to Insta at About a Blonde or Facebook at About a Blonde Official. Also, you can sign up for my mailing list at www.aboutablonde.com. Have a great day. Mwah!